So, most kids who struggle with English aren't behind because they're not smart. They're behind because English has never felt exciting or engaging to them. And that's not their fault. That's our fault. I'm Allie, and I want to share the teaching philosophy behind everything that I do. So, my name is Allie. I am a former Fulbrighter. I am a scuba diver, a world traveler to nearly 30 countries. I teach English and Spanish online, and I'm an avid pickleballer and marathoner. I was originally interested in healthcare until we had a community health teaching day with public health with local kids in Ecuador. And this kind of changed everything for me. So I realized, wow, I really love teaching. I was fun teaching the kids in Spanish. They were engaged, they were curious, they were alive. And this content was really real for them, right? We talked about hand washing and all the important practicing, like brushing your teeth, and we made it fun. So it was awesome. I love seeing the kids light up, especially when they saw I spoke Spanish, and they got so excited and felt so comfortable. So this day really changed it for me because kids must be interested, right? Or they won't stay engaged. And when they're interested and engaged, the magic happens. And I saw this that day. I had to make, hand washing and brushing your teeth aren't always the most exciting or fun topics. So I had to, create games and jokes and funny things with them to keep them on their toes and engaged, right? And I realized, learning can happen in so many ways. It doesn't just happen in the traditional classroom. So for me personally, my language learning journey, I improved tremendously when I moved to Spain for study abroad and lived with a host mom who spoke no English. So that forced me to stay in Spanish the whole time and do things even when I was uncomfortable or I didn't feel ready, right? Um, and sometimes the best language learning comes from outside the classroom entirely. So, a lot of these experiences sent me towards education, right? So, I studied Spanish, education, and teaching English. And then I eventually went on to teach as a Fulbright English teaching assistant in Cape Town. So, that was an incredible experience where I taught teens and adults English, and they were in the tourism department. So now I am focused on teaching kids online and all over the world. So I have taught kids in over 40 or 50 countries, I think it is now. Um, and I absolutely love it. I love seeing children go from, shy, not sure how to use the language, to be able to communicate clearly and confidently and to see that growth as well. So a little bit more about my teaching philosophy. So, my first belief is that kids really learn when they are genuinely interested. Not kind of interested, genuinely, passionately interested. So, for a lot of my football or soccer fans, they love the World Cup and they're very interested in, all things Messi or Ronaldo or Neymar, right? All of these big players. So, I try to incorporate that in my classes too. So, for example, a child who loves sharks will absorb vocabulary, discussion skills, and scientific thinking without even thinking and realizing that they're doing this. A child who loves dogs, or again, my soccer fans, they will talk about it for 20 minutes straight in English. If you give them the space and the structure, right? Maybe some sentence starters to help them boost their confidence so they have that support. So again, English is always the vehicle, but it's never the destination, right? So I love to incorporate interest-based learning within my classes. In every class, whether it's a PET prep test or prep class, or my shark club, or my dog lovers club, or my wildlife explorers, Percy Jackson English club, whatever the class, I choose these themes and these interests deliberately, where they connect to different English levels and they also circle back to interest level. They are fun activities. They're not just sitting there learning grammar, which is important, but it's not always the most interesting. And this is where I see students be turned off from learning a language. Again, my second teaching belief for my teaching philosophy is mistakes have to feel safe. So I really create a comfortable, fun, exciting environment. I want students to feel okay making mistakes because we make mistakes in our native languages all the time, right? Nobody's perfect. So I want them to feel okay trying and taking risks in my classroom because this is a safe place to practice. You won't get laughed at, um, and you won't it'll be okay if you make a mistake. The sun will rise, right? So I've had so many students come to me. They're so afraid. They don't want to see me in the first class because they don't want to talk to a native English speaker for the first time, right? They're afraid. They are just genuinely fearful. But guess what? They come to class, they show up, and they go from really shy, reserved, one-word answers being a little bit scared of getting it wrong, making mistakes, to the end of class, they are smiling, they're laughing at the jokes, they are having fun, right? And it's crazy to see the progress from one class or 3 months of class like this, right? They're really opening up, trying, progressing. And again, something that I do in my class is I reframe mistakes. They're just evidence of learning. That's all. So if you or your child, you're making mistakes in language learning, you are trying and you are progressing, right? And that's the way to go. Yeah, so I've had, for example, one of the little girls I'm working with, she has been learning with me for coming up on 2 years now. When she first came to class, she was at a lower English level. So she didn't always have the right vocabulary, wasn't sure how to use the English right. And she was also very shy, very fearful of making mistakes because she also learns English at school. So I think, the classroom, it's like you have to be accurate, you have to be right, you have to get 100% right. Sometimes we drill that into our children. But here, I don't care if you make a mistake. It is great. I celebrate those mistakes. And then we turn it into a learning moment. So it's a celebration, really. And I want kids to go and have fun and make mistakes in my class because otherwise they stay silent and they're not practicing these beautiful speaking skills, right? And number three is the best learning oftentimes happens outside school, outside the traditional classroom, right? So again, going back to my earlier story about teaching in Ecuador, I love the community. The real stakes of, this could really change somebody's life is learning proper public health things, such as, proper hand washing, brushing your teeth. These are all really important things that can change the trajectory of one's life, just as English or learning Spanish can, right? Or any other language. Um, Again, when I was in South Africa teaching in Cape Town, I had a lot of teens and students who knew the language, but they didn't have the confidence to use them, right? And again, I love building relationships with my students. I have students that I started teaching 5 years ago that still come back and say hi and check in on WhatsApp, which is awesome. And I love hearing from them. So I want my students to feel connected and to have this trust. And it really needs to be established before true learning and progress can happen. Because have you guys as parents ever experienced, a teacher or someone who's trying to teach you something, whether it's work or school or somewhere else, where maybe they were kind of scary and they didn't let you make mistakes? Did you feel comfortable to learn and to try new things? Probably not, right? Um, so this is really important for any type of learning. All right. Again, a little bit more about me is in my free time, I'm a marathoner. I love to play pickleball. I love anything outside, hiking, running, swimming, biking, all the things. And I love dogs and marine conservation. And I have spent a lot of time in Ecuador, or excuse me, Honduras doing a scuba diving conservation program, which was awesome. So I love to tie in how, talking about the different species, talking about coral, talking about how my students can make a difference in their day-to-day lives by doing simple things like turning off the tap when you brush your teeth or other conservation-minded things. I also love to travel. So something I love is learning from my students. each and every student has taught me something, whether it's learning, new phrases in Turkish, like merhaba or görüşürüz or evet or tamam, right? So I'm learning all of these things. Or maybe my students are teaching me about Chinese New Year or Dragon Boat Festival or, Eid or so many different festivals, right? My students are my teachers too. They become the expert, which is also a great way to get your child to see how they're learning, right? It's a great way for your child to learn is to teach, for them to be the expert. So this is an awesome thing. You can have them be the expert on anything and teach a sibling, teach a friend. Again, I'm a lifelong learner, so I love to study. I love to learn about other languages. And it's important to stay curious, just as it's important for you to model this for your child too. I love to travel. I've been to over 30 countries or almost 30 countries and the counting, right? And I love to scuba dive. So this is something I show my kids. It's okay to do hard things like marathon training, like scuba diving, like learning a language. It all connects, right? I have taught children from, I think, 40 or 50 countries now. So China, Taiwan, Uruguay, Spain, Latvia, US, so many different countries. So I love that. A little bit more about me is I offer small group classes for kids who are about, 7 to 12, I would say, and the topics that they actually love. So I always bring things that children love. I remember the small details, what they did last week, which concert they saw, what sporting event they had. So we do weekly check-ins as well. Some of my classes, we have the Shark Lovers Club, the Dog Lovers Club, Percy Jackson's book club, so read like a hero. I have some mug cake writing courses in the soccer passport class for the World Cup. So these classes, yes, they're fun, they're engaging, but the kids don't even realize that I have so many of these important English skills tied into them. For example, the mug cake writing class, they are reviewers, food critics, and they have to review the different aspects. So they learn characteristics of food. They learn how to write their own opinion as the food critic. So these are all really important skills they don't even realize that they're learning, which is awesome. It's the goal of it, right? Um, I also have the English Confidence Club, and this is an awesome, awesome club for well-rounded kids. So this is for kids, this is a dynamic class, so it focuses on what the students need. So if I notice, I give them their evaluation, their assessments, and I notice that most of the kids are struggling with a certain skill, topic, etc., we will focus on that. So it's always changing depending on student needs and goals. And all of my classes are live, they're online, and they're all confidence focused. So I'm working on obviously building your child's language skills, but also building their confidence because language and confidence are intertwined and you can't have one without the other. So the first step is this really fun 25-minute assessment lesson. Not a test, just a conversation. So they'll answer a few questions. We'll talk about I'll ask them a few questions like their name, their age, what they like to do, if they want to show me something in their home. I've had students bring their pet, their cat, their dog, most recently an axolotl. That was the craziest pet I've had on my classes before. So I like to see what's important in my children or my students' lives, and always bring that back to class because they love talking about these things, and that makes them feel, in a comfortable environment and seen. All right, so if the link is below in the video, and I'd love for you guys to check out my classes as well as the assessment lesson. So I'd love to give your child a professional evaluation and assessment, which kind of gives us the roadmap of where to go next. Awesome. Thank you guys. I will see you soon.